Hi, I'm Lee. Welcome to the channel. I hope you're having a lovely day. I'm a short, overweight, middle-aged white dude. I've got thinning brown hair, black gloss. I'm wearing a red t-shirt with my logo on it. Pretty cool, right? And in this video, I want to talk about the Tesla Powerwall. So we had a Tesla Powerwall installed, I want to say about 4 to 6 months ago. I can't remember exactly. And it is great. There we go. Video's done. You can sign off now. If you want more details, so what is a Tesla Powerwall? So a Tesla Powerwall is a battery for your house. A little bit about the specs. It is a 13.5 kilowatt hour battery. So it's got 13.5 kilowatt hours worth of power, and it can push out and pull in as much as 5 kilowatts at any one time. I think it does do a peak of 7, but that's only for like 3 or 4 seconds. So like if your oven needed to be kicked off for those 3 or 4 seconds, it can do a little bit more, but that's about the limit of what it can. And the idea behind the Tesla Powerwall, well, there's two. Number one, the idea is that overnight, obviously your solar panels, if you have solar panels, aren't generating energy, so you're going to be taking power from the grid. So if you want to be off grid and not take power from the grid, you use that battery. Or what some people do is they will only use it between, let's say, 5 o'clock and 10 o'clock when power is most expensive, and then they'll still use power from the grid later in the night or in the early morning when the power is cheap, or they'll only top it up, in the morning once the sun comes out. So that's a little bit about what it is. The reason why we got it, well, there's a couple of reasons. The reason why I got it was something that I didn't realize when we first got solar panels is if you have solar panels and the power goes down, your power still goes down. You don't have power just because you have solar panels. There's a very good reason for that. The reason is that your solar panels, any excess power that they're generating, so for example, if you have a look at our solar panels at the moment, our solar panels are generating probably about 6 kilowatts at the moment, and the house is only using about, you know, 0.7 or what have you. So, we're not, in fact, if I go into the app here, you can see it. So at the moment, our house is only using 0.7 kilowatts, but our solar panels are generating 6.6. Now, anything above that, that goes into the grid. And if the power went down, there was a power failure, and people need to be working on the power lines, and everyone's solar panels were pushing power into the grid, suddenly those cables are live, and then people are going to get electrocuted when they work on it. So that's the reason why. It makes perfect sense. So if you want your solar panels to work when there's a power failure, you need a home battery. And the reason for that is with the home battery, that excess power now has somewhere to go. And most batteries, not all, but most batteries are smart enough to turn the solar panels off if they're full. So let's say, our battery is 100% full at the moment. If the power went out, it would turn the solar panels off and they wouldn't use the panels. And then when the battery got down to about, let's say 80%, then it would kick the solar panels back on to top it up, and it would keep doing that throughout the day, and then it would get us through the night. So that's the main reason why I wanted a battery, was that our house could function when power goes out. From an economic point of view, there's this whole, it's funny how whenever I talk to people about a home battery, one of the first things they say is, how much does it cost? $15,000, in case you're wondering. So it's bloody expensive. And, the first thing that not the first thing, but the thing that they say right after that is, oh, well, how long is it going to take for it to pay itself back? Probably never. Well, it depends. I think it might actually pay itself back, not because the batteries are going to get cheaper, but because power is going to get more expensive. At least it has in the last year or two. In fact, that's how I managed to convince my wife to get the Powerwall, because she was very like, look, it'd be nice to have, but it's $15,000. So, and then last year, 2023, in July, when all of our power prices went up by 30 or 40%, suddenly my wife went, okay, well, now that power is so darn expensive, and the power went up, and what we got paid for putting our solar back into the grid went down, so we were getting squeezed from both ends effectively. And so by getting the battery, from her perspective, it was more that we wouldn't have to pay for power anymore. And spoiler alert, since we got the battery, I think, no, we haven't paid for power. We've been in, our account has been in credit, because we get a little bit of money for the solar that we put back into the grid, and that covers the usage, the daily usage charge, and then we're not using any power from the grid, and so we're in credit, which is nice. So let me take you through the process of getting the battery. We contacted a company, got it installed. A few things to be aware of with the install is you can install it outside, but you don't want it to have direct sunlight. So if you've got, like if you're in the northern hemisphere and you've got a north-facing wall that doesn't get a lot of sun, you could put it out there. It is waterproof and all that kind of stuff. But ideally, you probably want it inside. So we got it put, we didn't have any south-facing walls where it would work, where it had shade, and so we put it in the garage. You can't put it too close to things. So if there's an air conditioning vent on the outside, you can't put it close to that, all that kind of stuff. You do have to put a bollard next to it. Interestingly, I said to the guy when we were talking about the install, I said, oh, look, we never use our garage as a garage. We use it for storage. Do we have to put the bollard in? And he made a good point where it was like, well, you may not use it for storage, but what if you sell the house? So you don't use it. You get what I'm saying. So that's how that works. Now, one thing to also note is that you don't just get the battery. So you get the battery, which is the battery, and then you get this thing called a gateway, so the Tesla gateway. And the gateway is kind of like the brains. So the gateway is the thing that communicates between your battery and your solar panels and the electrical system and the grid and all that kind of stuff. And the installers came, they installed it, great, fantastic. Only took about a morning, it took us like about 3 hours to install. Everything was turned on, everything looked great. We've got N-phase microinverters. We're on single phase. Not sure why that's important, but just in case you were wondering. And first of all, it messed up the N-phase app because our N-phase app stopped reporting, and the people who installed it said, oh, don't worry, it's just got to work itself, give it a few days. And then we'd had the Powerwall for about not even a week, I think about a week. So they install it and then an inspector has to come and turn it on. So inspector came, I think we got installed on the Friday, inspector came on the Wednesday, checked everything was fine, turned it on. Then the following Wednesday, interesting enough, I was having coffee with my mate Simon. If you've watched some other videos, he's been in it. So having coffee with my mate Simon, and I was showing off. Oh, look at the app, and it's working great, and blah blah blah. And suddenly it goes, and we're getting nothing off. The Powerwall's just not there. It's not communicating. And as nerdy as I am, and as confident I am about all this power stuff and everything, I also had this moment of, oh, I really hope it hasn't caught fire and it's not burning my house down. And being the paranoid type that I am, I've got cameras all over the house. So quickly, particularly in the garage. So turn on the garage camera and it's like, okay, no, it's not on fire. It's fine. It's just not working. And I could see through the camera that the light was flashing really quickly on the battery. So quickly rushed home, had a look at it, did the usual switch it off and on again a few times. Ain't nothing happening. Called up the people who installed it. They had a quick look at it and they said, yeah, no, look, it looks like your gateway has just failed. And you know what? These things happen, mechanical, technical stuff, they can break. So I'm not going to make a big thing out of it. I will say though that Tesla did not cover themselves in glory in how they then dealt with that breakage. So on the day that the installers said, look, it looks like your gateway has failed, they said to me, look, what we're going to do is we've got some gateways in stock in our warehouse. We're going to talk to Tesla and we're going to see if we can use one of the ones that we've got in stock to replace yours so it gets replaced nice and quick. And then they'll replenish that with the warranty unit, what have you. And then it was like 2 weeks of silence. And then another week, and I can't remember exactly how long it was, but I was pretty miffed at the time. I think it took about 3 weeks to get it sorted. And getting it sorted, the actual process was really easy. The guy came, he checked everything was not working. Yep, gateway's done, replaced the gateway, and Bob's your uncle, and it's been working great ever since. But just that, it wasn't, yeah, I'll leave it at that, but it wasn't a great, particularly wasn't a great experience when things, I'm remembering now. The other reason why it really miffed me is that last year, between sometime in August or September through to the end of the year, Tesla was doing an $800 rebate. And we got our Powerwall installed like on the Friday, and the rebate went live like on the Monday or the Tuesday. So we just missed out. But then the gateway, which was brand new because it had to be replaced, was replaced within that time. And look, fair enough, I didn't reach out to them, so I probably should have reached out to them and gone, hey, can we get that rebate, seeing as that you installed a new gateway in the rebate time, but not the battery? And I didn't even remember to do that. But it would have been a nice gesture if they could have gone, oh, look, we're really sorry that it took 3 weeks to replace. We'll bump you onto the rebate program. So anyway, not the end of the world. So what's the thing been like since then? It's been fan-bloody-tastic. So let me take you through the app and you can see a little bit of sort of how it works. So once you get a Powerwall, it will live in the Tesla app. So if you have a Tesla car, you just flick across and there is the Powerwall setup. And you can see there at the moment, it is sort of the middle, what's it now? It's 12:15. And at the moment, my panels are generating 5.3. My car is pulling 4.6. By the way, I'm using this cool new feature. If you haven't seen the video, linking up in the corner, where the Tesla app will adjust the amount of solar that goes into the car, so it only uses solar to charge the car. Very, very cool. Yeah, link in the corner. So at the moment, we've got 4.6 going to the car. We've got 5.6 coming in. The house is using 0, and this, okay, 0.7, which brings me on to a topic that the numbers in the Tesla app in terms of how much power is going in and coming out sometimes seem a bit, how do I put this diplomatically, wrong. So there's that. And then you can see that the Powerwall down at the bottom, at the moment it's charged to 100%, but at the moment there's obviously clouds coming over and down, so the app is readjusting the level of charge that's going into the car, and so it's pulling a little bit out and then putting a little bit back into the battery. So that's how that works. The data that it gives you is pretty cool and pretty nerdy, so let's go and have a look at that. So first of all, let's go and have a look at energy. And you can see here that it'll show you, and let me just go have a look at yesterday. So you got like more of an overall day, or let's go have a look at Wednesday the 28th. So energy flow. So we used 48%, 45% of the power we used on that day came from the Powerwall, 54% came from solar, and see, it says 1% came from grid, but it's 0.0 kilowatt hour. So maybe it needs to, maybe it does, maybe it's not able to put a 0 there. I don't, like, I know we didn't use any grid power, so maybe it has to put a 1. You can see how much the car used, and let me go find a day where I charged the car a little bit. Looks like, well, there we go. So today you can see that the car is using 100% from solar. Then you can see what the battery is doing. So you can see where the discharge has happened, where the charge level is, and you can see that my home used 3.6, my vehicle has used 0 from the battery, 0 from the grid, and it's been charged 100% from solar, so it hasn't been charged at all from, so I can do 0%. So anyway, that confuses me a little bit. This is the graph that I look at the most, probably. And let me just turn everything on. So you see how there's a little eye icon over there towards the center and the middle. And you can turn that on or off, and that'll show you either just the energy flow or it'll break it down. So I can see, right, well, my home has used 18%, 3.3 kilowatt hours. The vehicle used 6%, 1.1 kilowatt hours. The Powerwall used 7.4 to fill itself up this morning. And we've pushed 5.6 kilowatt hours of power to the grid. And then you can see how much is imported and used by and exported and all that good stuff. So there's a lot of really cool data in here. And this is, yeah, this is the one that I probably look at the most. So this is, I like this because I can see what's used, what amount of power, and how much we've generated over those few days. So that's all the energy graphy stuff. Then you have impact, and you can see whether you've been self-powered or you've used stuff from the grid. And this is looking by year, but you can break it down, I presume. Yeah, so instead of year, you can tap on year and you can say by month, by date, by have you, so on and so forth. And you might be wondering the energy value, how much the energy is. I'll show you now where you enter that in. So if we tap on the eye, it gives you a little tutorial, but let's go ahead and jump into settings. So this is some of the important stuff. So this is the thing that most people look at. This is probably the first thing you're going to look at, is in the settings, is you can set up your reserve. So most people will set the reserve to 20%. So that means when the battery is using power for the home and it gets to 20%, it won't use more than 20%. Now you can set that all the way down to 0 if you want, or all the way up to, 100 if you want, but most people leave that at 20. And you can see, actually, if you set it below 20, it will come up with a warning and say, while off-grid, your Powerwall will enter a standby state below 5% capacity, during which you will have intermittent usage. So basically, if you take the battery under 5%, it's possible that and then it gets to 0, it's possible that the battery won't then be able to restart itself. Someone will actually have to come and sort of effectively give you a boost to restart the battery. So I've gotten the battery down to 10%, but I probably wouldn't recommend going below 10, and most people just leave it here at 2080. And then you have a couple of other different options here. So you can say self-charged, which basically means use energy stored from the battery. So basically keep using the battery until it gets to 20% and never use from the grid if at all possible. And that also comes down here where you can go grid charging, where you can go no, and I've set that to no, but you can also set it to yes. And you can say, you know, set it yes, and it goes grid charging may have tax implications. So obviously that's going to cost you money. So if you never want to charge from the grid, or I mean, it's not going to never charge from the grid, because when it gets to 20% and you're not getting any solar, it is then going to pull from the grid. But this is basically saying, as much as possible, don't use anything from the grid. The next one is time-based control. And this one, I think this you'd use maybe if you don't have solar panel for whatever reason. So maybe you've just got the battery and you don't have solar. And so you want the battery to power your house, or the battery can't power your house through a whole night. And so let's say the battery, you say to the battery, okay, only work from this time to that time, and then use the grid at other times. So only use the battery for expensive times, so you're not paying for expensive power, and then use grid in the cheaper times. So if I go in here and just, excuse me, set this up, so use time-based, and I can go utility, and in here, you enter in the details from your power bill. So a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people these days have got timed bills. So for example, during peak hours, so for example with us, from 3 to 9 p.m, that's when power is most expensive. So with us, for peak, from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m, power costs us 38 cents per kilowatt. It's probably changed. I mean, I set this up months ago and I didn't update it because we don't use this setting. And then in off-peak, it's 24 cents per kilowatt. So you can adjust this, you can set this all up. You can go in and set different seasons. You can go in and set a schedule. So you can go, right, well, ooh, yeah, no, don't do that. So you can say, you know, from that time to that time, what have you. And that's how you set this all up. Doesn't really matter because I use self-powered. And basically that means I say to my battery and to the whole system is, wherever possible, use the battery and solar and don't touch the grid. And in the 5 or 6 months that we've had this up and running, I think twice we've touched the grid for about 4 or 5 kilowatt hours in total. Because where that happened was we had 2 really overcast days in a row. And so the first day, battery was full, it was fine. Overnight, the battery probably used about, let's say 60%, so it was only 40% full the next morning. And then it was so dark that we only got about 10 or 15% back into the battery during the day. So the battery started the evening session when we need the battery, it was only about 50 or 60% full, and we needed 60 or 70%. And that's when I set it to 10, so I could just get that extra little 10%. And so at about, I don't know, like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, the battery got to 10%, and then the house started using grid power. But as you can see, I'm just going to jump back here, our house uses so little power. So we've got the aircon running here in my office, we've got the aircon running in Mandy's in Mandy's office, and you know, I've got my computers running, I've got a couple of servers going, and the house is still only using 0.6 kilowatt hours at the moment. Now also it's pretty cool today. I'm sure later in the afternoon when the sun starts hitting the house, it'll be a different story, but you get what I'm saying. Let's go back into settings and see what else there is in here. So in vehicle charging, this was set up fairly recently. So if you do have a Tesla wall connector, you can restrict charging to a particular time. So it'll only charge from this time to that time. So again, if you have time-based tariffs on your electrical bill, you can tell the car only charge from 10 o'clock at night to 6 o'clock in the morning when power is really cheap or what have you. And there you can see now that I'm using the charge on solar setting, it's set up here and my car is paired with that. Stormwatch. This is really cool. This may not be available in every country. So I know like they set it up in Australia about a year ago maybe. And what this does is the app actually monitors weather reports. And if there's potential for bad weather or a storm or a situation where the power might get knocked out and your battery is not at 100%, it will go, I don't care what you've told I think this is what it does, so don't quote me on this. The Powerwall will charge the maximum from the grid. So it'll just go, I don't care if there's enough solar coming in or not enough solar. I don't care if it's cloudy. I don't care if it's raining. I need the power, so I want to get to 100 so that if the power does go out, you've got as much battery backup as possible. Then also your utility plan. Yeah, I showed you how that all works. Phone pairing. Now this is really important. So you definitely want to go in and you can see that I've paired two phones. One of them, my old one of them, my new one, and my wife's got the old one, so she's fine. The reason why you want to pair your phone, and I might step you through it, show you while I'm doing this, maybe not, fairly straightforward to do it. It pairs the phone to the battery. I don't know if it's the battery or the gateway. I think it's the battery. So it pairs it to the battery over Bluetooth. The reason for that is if you think about it, if there's a power failure and you want to access stuff about the battery or change settings or anything, the way you access the battery is through the app, which is through the internet, and odds of the power's out, the internet's not working. And so if your phone is paired with the battery, then even without the internet, your phone and the app can communicate with your battery. Obviously, you've got to be nice and close, just over Bluetooth or over the local Wi-Fi, and you don't have to have the internet working in order to access the battery. So if you are going to get a Powerwall, or if you've got a Powerwall and you haven't done this pairing thing, muy importante, go ahead and do that. Wi-Fi, so you can see it's connected there to Wi-Fi, and you can manage access, so you can add who does have access, who doesn't have access. And finally, you've got your home info. So that is all the stuff in the Tesla Powerwall. Now, in the setting, so that is all the stuff in the settings of the Tesla Powerwall. And the last thing down here is go off grid. So this is something, I'm not going to do this now because the car's charging and so on, but I might get some B-roll of when we did this before. So this is actually something that you probably want to do during the day, ideally, the first week or so that you get the Powerwall. The reason why this is this will simulate as if the power's gone out and your whole house has to go off grid. You want to do this just to test it, because it's possible that a wire's not connected or something's not been done quite right or what have you. The odds are very slim, but it's possible. And so I think it's a good idea, at least in the first week that you've got the battery, do the whole go off grid test, just to see that it works. And if it works, great. If not, call up the people who installed it and, you know, get them to fix it. Because at least for me, that was one of the main reasons why I got that, why we got the Powerwall, so that if the power goes out. Having said that, you know, we live in Southeast Melbourne, and I could count on one hand the amount of times the power's gone out in the 10 years or so that we've lived here. But peace of mind. Now, in terms of how much power you need and how much you don't need, during the summer months, we've been absolutely fine. We probably only use about maximum 70% overnight. Like if we've got the aircon running in the bedrooms overnight because it's a particularly hot night, we might use 70% of the battery. Most nights we only use about 50 to 60% of the battery. So it gets us through a whole night, no problem whatsoever. I can see that during the winter, I think the battery will just not be enough to get us through the night. So we'll probably use a little bit of grid power every morning for the last 2 or 3 hours of that morning before the sun comes out and the solar panels start putting power back into the battery. It'd be nice to get a second battery, but we'll see how we go, because we don't need it, but we'll see how we go. Something to keep in mind with multiple batteries is the second if we do get the second battery somehow, if we find the money for that, that will be cheaper. The reason why it will be cheaper is because the $15,000 that we paid for the battery was for the battery and the gateway. So we already have a gateway. So if you want a second or a third or however many batteries more, the battery itself at the time of this video, which is March 1st, 2024, is only $12,000. Also keep in mind, depending on what state you're in Australia, there are some government or local state rebates, some of them up to like $2,000 off of the price of the battery. Like Queensland, oh, you lucky, lucky people. I think you've got some really nice rebates on home batteries at the moment. We didn't get the rebate for various reasons that I won't go into, but that full price without the rebates, at least in Melbourne, was $15,000 for install about 6 months ago, sort of around August 2024. So I think that's sort of covered everything that I wanted to about the battery. I hope this video. If you have any questions, please, down in the comments, would love to chat about it. I've been really happy with it. Support and that kind of stuff. So what Tesla says in terms of the warranty with the battery, I think the warranty is 8 years on the battery, and by 8 years they expect it to have at least 70%. So if you get to 8 years time and the battery's only filling up to 69% of its original capacity, they will replace your battery anytime in those 8 years. But after 8 years, they expect it to be around sort of 70% capacity, which, I mean, look, would I like it to not be that way? Yes, but it is what it is, and it's a tool, and tools are meant to be used, so we're using it. I hope this video was helpful. I hope it was useful. Hopefully not too rambling, and things made sense. But yeah, if you have found this video useful, if you have found it helpful, please like and subscribe. If you have subscribed already, thank you so much for your support, and we'll catch you on the next one. Safe and happy driving. Wow, that was a lot of me talking at the camera, wasn't it? It felt like blah, 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 so much information. Blah, 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 blah. This charge on solar, happy days, happy days.